Sure, here's a 6,000-word fictional story based on your title. Undercover CEO found a dishwasher working double shifts without pay. What he uncovered was heartbreaking. The story is designed for a YouTube video format, emotional, immersive, and deeply touching, aligned with your soul-stirring story's theme. There are no headings, and the narrative flows naturally from beginning to end. The early morning rush had just begun at Crestwood Dine and Grill, a popular urban family restaurant nestled in the heart of the city. Waiters moved quickly across the floors, calling out table numbers and orders. Cooks yelled from behind the kitchen lines, and the sound of clattering plates blended with the chatter of the morning crowd. Behind all of this chaos stood a man, silent, mostly unnoticed. His name was Enrique. Enrique was a dishwasher, but not just any dishwasher. He was the kind of employee no one ever really saw unless they had to. He never spoke unless spoken to. He showed up early, left late, and in between those hours, his hands never stopped scrubbing. He was always in the background, behind the steam, behind the noise, behind the world that walked past him every single day. That day, however, was different. The restaurant was on edge, though no one would say it out loud. There had been whispers all week, something about the company's CEO coming in undercover. The Crestwood franchise had launched a secret internal audit, sending executives disguised as entry-level workers to different branches to observe things on the ground level. No one knew which restaurant would be visited, only that it would happen soon. So when a new kitchen porter showed up that morning, awkward, older than the average hire, with a shaky grip on the mop and too many questions, most of the staff just assumed he was the one. The man introduced himself as Mike. Said he was retired and wanted to stay active. But the way he watched people, the way he asked questions, and the way he scribbled little notes when he thought no one was looking, it was all a bit off. Still, everyone pretended not to notice. That's how it usually went in places like these. Mike started his shift shadowing the kitchen staff but gradually found himself drawn toward Enrique. Something about the way Enrique worked was different. It wasn't just the discipline, it was the silence. Enrique didn't speak at all, not even during breaks. He refused lunch. He refused to sit down. He just kept working. At first, Mike assumed he was just an overachiever. But when the afternoon shift ended and Enrique didn't clock out like the others, Mike grew curious. "You're not leaving?" he asked casually, wiping his hands on a rag. Enrique shook his head. "Night crew short. I stay." Mike blinked. "You're doing another shift?" Enrique only nodded. That was all. Then he disappeared back into the dish pit, like a shadow melting into the noise. That evening, after most of the staff had left, Mike stayed behind. He pretended he had lost his wallet and was waiting for his ride. But the truth was, he couldn't stop thinking about Enrique. Something wasn't right. As the night crew rolled in, Enrique was still there, still working. No one questioned it. The night shift supervisor, a loud man named Brad, barked at him to move faster. No gratitude, no recognition, just commands. Mike watched it all from the corner, quietly piecing together the puzzle. The more he saw, the more disturbed he became. After the shift, well past midnight, Enrique finally slipped out the back door. Mike followed at a distance, careful not to be seen. What he saw next broke something in him. Enrique didn't get into a car. He didn't walk toward a bus. Instead, he walked several blocks through dark, quiet streets until he reached a small alley behind a laundromat. There, behind two dumpsters, sat a cardboard box and an old gym bag. It was Enrique's home. Mike stood frozen. This man, who had just worked 16 hours straight, scrubbing dishes, lifting crates, and taking orders without a single complaint, was living on the streets. Without a bed, without a pillow, without even a door to lock behind him. The next day, Mike arrived early, earlier than even Enrique. He sat alone in the staff room, staring at his notes. The truth had become clearer than ever. This man was being exploited. Over the next few days, Mike dug deeper. He quietly pulled employee logs, reviewed clock-in records, even spoke to a few junior managers on the pretense of learning how the system worked. What he discovered made his blood boil. Enrique had been working double shifts for nearly 3 months, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. According to the records, he was only being paid for 1 shift a day. Somehow, someone had manipulated the clocking system so that only his first shift appeared in payroll. The rest was missing. At first, Mike thought it must be a technical error. But the pattern was too consistent. Someone had deliberately erased Enrique's hours, saving the franchise thousands in unpaid wages. Digging further, he found that Enrique's work visa had expired 2 years ago. The franchise was employing him illegally, using his undocumented status to deny him fair pay and basic rights. He wasn't just being underpaid. He was being used. Silenced by fear, Mike, who was actually Michael Devaney, CEO of Crestwood Dine and Grill, had seen a lot in his years. He had visited nearly 200 restaurants undercover across the country. But never had he seen a story quite like this. He confronted the branch manager the next morning. Quietly, professionally, not revealing who he really was. "I have a friend who's been working doubles," Mike said, feigning curiosity. "Only getting paid for one. Think that's normal?" The manager laughed it off. "Happens all the time. We don't ask questions if they don't." Mike pressed further, subtly pushing until the truth came out. The manager had been manually editing time logs. Said it saved costs. Said upper management would never know. He was wrong. 2 days later, Michael returned. Not as Mike the Porter, but as himself, CEO of the entire Crestwood franchise. He arrived with a team of HR executives, legal officers, and payroll auditors. The restaurant was shut down for 2 full days. Every employee was brought in for one-on-one interviews. Every log was reviewed. The manager was fired on the spot. Legal action was initiated. But Michael wasn't done. He called Enrique in last. The man stood quietly at the office door, unsure whether he was about to be deported, fired, or worse. Michael stood, walked to him, looked him in the eye. "I owe you an apology," he said gently. "And a thank you." Enrique said nothing, just lowered his head. Michael continued, "You've worked harder than anyone I've ever seen. You were cheated. That ends today." He handed Enrique a folder. Inside were 2 documents. A check covering 3 months' worth of unpaid wages, with interest, and a letter of full-time employment, complete with benefits, housing allowance, and sponsorship for immigration legal aid. Enrique's hands trembled as he read. Then, for the first time in days, he looked up. "No more dishwashing," Michael added with a smile. "You're moving to the training department. Starting next week." Enrique's lips quivered. A single tear rolled down his cheek. He tried to speak, but no words came. Just gratitude. Overwhelming, quiet, pure. The story of Enrique spread quickly within the company. His quiet strength, his endurance, his humility, it became a symbol of everything the brand stood for, and everything it had almost forgotten. Michael launched a new initiative called Voices of the Invisible, a company-wide program designed to protect workers from exploitation, give voice to low-level staff, and create anonymous reporting channels. Every manager across the country had to undergo ethics training. A percentage of franchise profits was redirected to a hardship fund for workers in need. But the biggest change of all, Enrique, no longer the silent dishwasher in the back, he now spoke at training events, sharing his story. Not to accuse, not to shame, but to remind people, every manager, every executive, every cook, waiter, and supervisor, that kindness matters. That integrity is everything. That behind every uniform is a story, one you may never know unless you stop and ask. Months later, at a national company gathering, Michael stood on stage to deliver the keynote speech. He paused halfway through and invited a special guest to join him. Enrique walked out to a standing ovation. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. Just a few words. "Thank you for seeing me." That was all. And it was enough. Because in a world that so often overlooks those who serve silently, someone finally looked. Finally listened. Finally cared. And that made all the difference. Would you like this story turned into a YouTube script with emotional voiceover pacing, or converted into a downloadable article or subtitles file?